I'm going to be honest. I kept stopping this video and I had to restart it multiple times just because I kept forgetting the plot of this movie. And yes, there are plots to each of these movies, as much as we say there aren't. But here we are. So, Fast and Furious 4 was directed by Justin Lin, and it features the original stars from the first Fast and Furious movie: Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Jordana Brewster, Michelle Rodriguez, who all once again returned for this movie after several absent years. And this time around, Brian O'Connor is once again working as a detective. He's actually working for the FBI now, which somehow is not the most illogical thing in this franchise. Um, yeah, he works with Dominic Toretto again, and they have to track down this drug dealer that is partially responsible for the death of Letty, played by Michelle Rodriguez. And that's the movie. So I remember when this movie came out, it seemed like it was going to be a big deal, only because of the fact that it had all the original stars from the very first movie coming back. And it kind of worked because now we have like a 10th Fast and Furious movie coming out now, which honestly I'm surprised it has that many entries, but whatever. And let's talk about this movie. I honestly don't like it. This may be the most boring of all the entries. At least all the other movies kind of have something that kind of makes it worthwhile and kind of watchable. This may be the least watchable of all of them, if I'm being completely honest. Nothing interesting is happening, and even when the stuff is actually really good, it's one, not that great, and at the same time, it kind of makes the movie worse because like I've kind of just grown to the silliness of this whole series. So what does work in this movie? Well, once again, the original cast returning is probably the biggest selling point, and they actually do get a lot of scenes together, particularly Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, and Jordana Brewster in this movie. I do like the chemistry between them. I do kind of like how they kind of like tie up some of the loose ends from the very first movie. Also, of the performances themselves, I think Jordana Brewster surprisingly does the best. I thought she was really good here. I thought she was even better than the first movie that she was in. Um, I felt like her character has a lot more to do. Kind of like how I kind of like her chemistry with Brian O'Connor in the first movie, and I kind of like how she kind of grows into her own in this movie. Thought she was good. And as far as the heist scenes go, and like the car chases, and like the races in this movie, they're decently done. Like they're not over the top. They are, you know, they're fine. They don't do much for me. They're passable, but at the same time, I'm just kind of thinking you could have do something with this. There's not a whole lot that they are doing. Like there's kind of some cars that are toppling around. There's like trucks that are like being uh, they're just rolling towards Dom and Letty a couple times. Not a whole lot is interesting in this movie, if I'm being honest. Nothing works. The villain in this movie is incredibly boring, played by John Ortiz. And I didn't think his character was interesting. I didn't think the reveal that, he has a twin brother who is actually the drug dealer was very interesting. And I honestly kept forgetting. I kept forgetting that he was also in another Fast and Furious movie. He was in the sixth one, which shows you how much I actually care about these movies. And yet I still have the Blu-ray. And again, this movie is just very, very boring overall. Like, they try to take it a little too seriously. At least in the other ones, there's some sort of sense of fun. Like, Fast and Furious, the first Fast and Furious movie, that's going to be really annoying saying the Fast and Furious and Fast and Furious. That's really annoying. But, like, it's just, they don't really crack jokes throughout. Like even like the first movie, that's like it didn't take itself too seriously, but they still had time to like make jokes with each other and kind of like just be people. Too Fast, Too Furious had some ridiculous action scenes that kind of made the movie worth watching. And then Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift was also a little bit too ridiculous at times, but those movies at least had something. Fast and Furious 4 doesn't really have anything. It's kind of boring overall, and this may sound like really bad, but it's somewhat implausible at times. Yeah, a Fast and Furious movie being implausible, who would have guessed? But like Brian's looking for this guy, and so is Dom, and they somehow Dom has the guy like he's holding him outside the window, he's upside down, and then that's how Brian and Dom meet up for the first time in this movie. That's really fascinating. Also, like immediately afterwards, Brian punches one of his coworkers, and he's somehow not fired from his job. Doesn't make any sense. And also, how did he become an FBI agent? I get it that, like, you know, his work with Too Fast, Too Furious, like, that kind of got him off, but, like, how did he become a FBI agent again? It makes zero sense to me. And it's, it's so, it's kind of just boring to me. I just didn't care for this movie too much, and also it mimics a lot of things from the first movie. Like, a lot of people give crap to a lot of movies for just recreating just the previous entries in the franchise, but this movie basically recreated scenes from the first Fast and Furious movie, and that movie wasn't even a decade old at this point. I think this movie came out in 2009, and, like, looking back on it, I'm like, isn't this kind of just the same thing as the Fast and the Furious? That may be why this is called Fast and Furious, because you're just literally taking the title of the original movie. You're just removing the word "the" from the title. And that kind of gets it away. You kind of get away with kind of like doing things again from previous entries. I honestly don't care for the Fast and Furious. I don't care for Fast and Furious 4. This movie is not interesting. It's not fun, even though the original cast is pretty good, and kind of like seeing them work with each other again, I just didn't care too much for it. The villain is boring. The feeling overall is just boring and just bland. Even like some of the scenes, like the heist scenes and the race scenes, are kind of fun. I wasn't really too invested in them overall. It's just, yeah. At times it kind of plays it too safe, and sometimes it plays off as too convoluted. And I just felt like it really couldn't stick. Like, are we going over the top or are we not? Like, and eventually they just kind of just settle it with, let's just go over the top. But this movie just doesn't work for me. I'll give Fast and Furious 4 1 out of 4 stars. Skip it. I felt like I was rambling during that whole thing. And somehow it was more coherent than Fast and Furious 4. So what'd you think of Fast and Furious 4? I don't even have a question for you. Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.